Listen, have you ever gotten lost in the forest? A deep, dark forest with no escape. A deep, dark forest with no escape.
All graveyards should be left alone, right? I mean, we go there to pay our respects, and then, I don't know, maybe we should leave them in peace? Especially graveyards of, different cultures? You know what I mean? Who knows what spirits live in those graveyards? That was my very best friend, the wild but brilliant Sarah, giving me this advice as she was literally peeing on a tombstone. And I only remember this because it was the first time we drank beer outside of my house. I learned my lesson that summer. I really did. I will never, ever go into a graveyard by myself ever again, even though it was by accident. I remember it hurt like hell. Passed out at the bottom of my dad's rubber rowboat. My hands were torn and bleeding from the barbed wire, and I was just lying there, left at the mercy of whirling forest spirits who tracked me down. Above me, big black crows were swirling around, laughing at me. And all I wanted in that moment was to reach our big boat, the Mercy Blue, which was drifting helplessly in a strong current near the shore. Earlier that year, we launched her on a cold spring afternoon, and I'll never forget the proud look on my dad's face when Mum cracked the bottle of champagne over Mercy Blue's bow for good luck, and how we all cheered when the boat slid down the ramp into the blue waters of Burrard Inlet. My dad spent 3 years building her, and finally we had a summer escape. So when summer came, we went on our first adventure, a breezy 3-hour sail across to the Gulf Islands. To be honest, when we dropped anchor off the west coast of Galiano Island, I was surprised. It was so magical, and there was a river of crystal clear ocean between 2 small islands. And when the tide was out, a white sand beach revealed itself. Finally, I thought. After the rain and mist that hovered over Vancouver for most of the year, my dad had found the perfect summer vacation spot. There was a pristine beach bed, which was awesome, and it was filled with clams and seashells. And so we spent our days just like Robinson Crusoe, picking clams, swimming, throwing stones at the jealous crows who were constantly squawking from the trees that lined both islands. Here in sunny paradise, Mum and I had finally reached a truce. She even offered me a beer over dinner while Dad played his harmonica. So anyway, back to my best friend Sarah. To be honest, some kids, including Sarah, loved to smoke pot. It was Sarah who tried to convince me to try some. She said, like she was acting brave or something, "Don't get paranoid, we got this." Then, making us all laugh, she dropped down. And that's when she relieved herself on the tombstone. "Hey, just showing my respect," she said. "Hey, Mariana, you want a beer?" Well, the thing was, I liked drinking beer. And well, that's about the time my mother and I gave up on each other. Mom wouldn't stand for it. So there was no turning back, no escape for both of us until after 2 years. The wooden boat Dad had been building in the backyard, Mercy Blue, was finally finished. But on that sunny morning on our boat in the Gulf Islands, Mom started being Mom again, and Dad allowed me to camp on my own. There was a perfect camping spot on a high bluff overlooking us, just meters from the boat. Mom was hurt, but she understood. And as Dad said, Mom and I were too much alike. I packed my tent, 2 blankets, and a couple of books. and Dad helped me get it all in the rowboat, which was really an orange Zodiac made with thick rubber. As I rode on the flat green water toward the South Island, I looked up into the blue and saw 2 golden eagles soaring in the sky. I watched them soar way up, and then tumble down into a death spin, then finally clutched together at the end. I reached the shore, grabbed my stuff, hoisted everything up a rock face, and found myself a sweet spot to camp on the grassy bluff. Across the water, my mom and Dad were on the deck of the Mercy Blue, Dad tinkering with some ropes and Mom drinking her mid-morning coffee. Setting up camp didn't take long, so it seemed like a good time to explore. I found a trail that led to the inside of the island. High above, great branches of cedar arched over me as I moved inland, and no surprise, the island forest was filled with more screeching crows. I should have listened to the crows, but I didn't. Perhaps they were trying to warn me. The leaves of the forest turned to a darker shade as I walked. The whole place seemed to be suddenly tense, like it was tuned to a strange vibration. Behind tree trunks, I detected movement. Shadows dodged in and out of other shadows. They were like having some sort of shadow party. Anyway, Dad said the islands were deserted, so I just kept walking. Brushing past the ferns and the overgrown flowers, I could feel the day was getting even more ominous, and every time I stopped to get my bearings, it seemed the tall orange wildflowers were lunging for my neck. I felt like Frodo, but without the dwarf guy with the axe. I was thinking an axe could be pretty handy when all of a sudden I slipped and fell on the forest floor. Everything was dead silent. I was aware of something eerie and sinister, as if someone had snapped their fingers and all sound was swallowed whole. The breeze bent the grass, the innocent flowers swayed helplessly, and I know it sounds like my 9th grade English paper, but as I said, there wasn't a sound. "Shut up, you damn crow, I'm trying to tell a story here. Like I said, there wasn't a sound." Sarah's voice was ringing in my ears. Peering between the branches, the sun was glaring over at me. "Get out of here, you pervert! Yeah, that was me, yelling at the sun!" And that's when I caught myself. Was Sarah my guardian angel? So even though I was in a daze, I got up. I had to get back. These forest vibes were weirding me out. I raced back, and now the bush was heavier and more intense, like leather whips slaying my sides and my face as I ran. I wanted to sail through the long grass, but I crashed into something. A barbed wire fence. The back of my hand had scraped across a star of barbed wire and tore the skin. The pain was excruciating. No one could hear me except for those stupid crows laughing at me. I must have blacked out, because when I came to, the sun had dropped, and when I looked at the mess of tangled wire at my feet, blood had pooled on an old slab of a tombstone. I remember how Sarah had disrespected the headstone at the graveyard. It's her fault. I gotta get better friends, I told myself. And so, as I raced through the forest, the evening entered the island with a roar. The sound of nature, crickets, and edge of night things flooded my ears. I shook the bugs from my head and kept running. I tripped over a root, banged my head, recovered, and kept running. And then I saw my orange Zodiac, bobbing in the rising tide. Its line was untied, but I stumbled across the rocks and caught it just before it floated away. "Mariana!" On Mercy Blue's deck, Mom was standing with her hands cupped around her mouth. My dad looked dejected, holding a broken anchor line in his hands. And in that moment, I realized they were probably the worst sailors in all of North America. The blood from my arms and legs stained the sides of the Zodiac as I slid in and lay waiting. Of course, neither of my parents had any idea of what happened to me. So I lay there like a zombie trying to make sense of it all. Graveyards, Sarah, spirits, the bloody fence, bad karma, stupid crows who acted like reincarnated spirits. Maybe I had crossed over into some overrated spirit world. I don't know. When the Mercy Blue finally reappeared, I managed to row back to the boat. Everything was quiet, except for the sound of my paddle stroking the dark tide. The crows were gone, thank God. And as I looked over at the rocky shore, there it was, the answer to the worst afternoon in my entire life. He was standing proudly in the evening mist, sort of a ghostly figure in a frilly jacket and moccasins, looking like a tribal leader from days of old. And he was hunting in the shadows in the last strand of light. Yeah, I know, poetic. Anyways, I got stitched up at the local hospital, and after that, we sailed home to Vancouver. The nurse had told my parents about the local native burial grounds. I can't remember what I told my dad about the island. But a few weeks later, Dad sold the Mercy Blue, and we never talked about his boat or the island ever again.